This is knowledge that should not just remain in the hands of scientists.
I've seen AIs do things that just leave me breathless.
Numerical simulations are almost the only way we have to simulate and understand why these animals might be going to protect them.
In the environment area, the digital twin is still really a challenge.
The digital twin cannot substitute the policymakers to make their own decisions.
Ocean Calls.
Hello and welcome to Ocean Calls, the podcast in which we break down the science, talk to the experts and share some inspiring ocean stories. I'm Jeremy Wilkes, Euronews science reporter, and in this episode we'll be talking about science fiction coming true, a technology that can help us make science-based decisions and see the effect of these decisions on the ocean and on our lives even before we've made them. This technology is called the Digital Twin of the Ocean, a European Union initiative to create an artificial intelligence-fueled representation of the seas, and it should be accessible to the public later in 2024. Now, the main goal of the Digital Twin of the Ocean is to help the end users, so that's policymakers, businesses and society, you and me, to make science-based decisions and simulate what-if scenarios through new visualization tools. Joanna Staneva, a physicist at the Helmholtz-Zentrum Herion Research Center in Germany, explains the concept.
Think of the artificial intelligence as a tool that helps us to predict and understand what is going on in the ocean. This can be, for example, some complex ocean processes, or this can be also an information that is needed to fill in the gaps. So we can produce the different what-if scenarios. It is important to bring the science to decision makers and also to bring the science to the larger audience in the society. But this has been done before this digital era as well. Of course, nowadays the public is more aware of the problems, with marine pollution, or more aware of the problems related with the climate change. Also, there are more action behind that. But the idea behind the digital twin is not simply to facilitate the decision makers and users to make their own decisions. And it is not just to bring in the science to the society, but this is already a different level of technology, because nowadays we are living in a digital era. We have in our hands a really big amount of data and information. This information is coming from observation. All these new satellites data, they bring a really very powerful and useful and very sweet information. From the other side, the models, the climate models, or in our respected ocean models, they are already mature enough to predict our ocean. But this data has to be easily accessible. It is not only to have the big dynamical models to be used by the scientists and artificial intelligence, but also visualization, but to combine everything together and to bring all these powerful but very nice information in the better language and more understandable way at the different levels, the decision makers, the society, and even the school kids. Neither artificial intelligence nor digital twin by itself and by its own can help us solving such a big problem like climate change and marine pollution. But they will really facilitate and help in combination with many other factors towards this. This is really a fantastic tool. This is actually a tool that is transferred from scientists to stakeholders, to decision makers, and to the society. Because from the complex science, which includes the big information and big data and complicated models and artificial intelligence, which is all integrated, we can bring the what-if scenarios and the decision tools, but also the science itself in a language that is understandable to everyone. And in this case, we can showcase the different scenarios related to the climate change in order to mitigate problems, in order to understand the impacts, but most importantly, to find the different solutions in respect of the climate change. The digital twin acknowledges well that our understanding of the ocean is never or ever perfect. We consider different factors here as limitation of the data, but also the changing of the water patterns and human influence, which is also very important, which provides the realistic view of the possible outcomes of our what-if scenarios. And we have also to communicate this with the society. We live in a world of technology, but also this technology is connected with uncertainties. And this is all about presenting this information in a more transparent way, making the users, making the society aware of the confidence level of our scenarios and our predictions. The digital twin cannot substitute the policymaker and decision makers to make their decisions and our solutions. The digital twin can help, they can support, but they cannot do this for everyone. In addition, implementing a digital twin is demanding and there are many challenging, as I mentioned. The one is that we are dealing with uncertainties, but also the data availability is a problem. Here, the digital twin can be pro and contra. We can use the digital twin really to reach more remote places in the ocean. The ocean is vast, and the information that we are gathering from the ocean is very limited. We know that the satellite data, they are at the surface, but we are lacking of sufficient information for the deep ocean. And this is where the digital twin can support for making the four-dimensional picture of the ocean. However, in some aspects, we do need to train the artificial intelligence. We do need to train our model. And if we don't have sufficient information and knowledge how to train that, we cannot expect that the digital twin can provide us a smart solution or prediction of the ocean health and ocean state. So this always has to be compromise and two-way exchanges and approaches. Another challenge, of course, is that the digital twin requires a lot of computational resources because we are dealing with a huge amount of data set. We are dealing with a complex modeling system. The dynamicals model are complex. Whatever you are a journalist or you are a student or you can be a policymaker or someone who goes on the beach and enjoy being in the beach, understanding the science behind this is very important, and it also fosters a sense of a connection with the ocean, but most importantly also the responsibility.
So, as Joanna explained, the main goal of the digital twin of the ocean is to be able to visualize very complex ideas and information in an easily accessible form that everybody can actually understand and then take sensible decisions based on. And one of the things that we can help to visualize, for example, is plastic pollution, understand more about plastic pollution, which we know is a menace in our oceans, a threat to lots of ecosystems, and it's found almost everywhere. So a scientist called Simon van Gennep, who's an oceanographer at Mercator Ocean International, is working on a model of the digital twin of the ocean that can basically evaluate plastic pollution and predict where a given piece of plastic may end up in the future. Let's have a listen to him.
At Mercator Ocean, we develop ocean systems that reconstruct the state of the ocean. So this means the currents, the temperature, the salinity at the surface, but also across the full depth of the ocean in 3 dimensions. We develop applications such as plastic contamination in the ocean. So if people want to protect a place, they can figure out how much plastic is contaminating an area and where it comes from. On the digital twin of the ocean, I've got access to the surface currents through a global model that recreates the circulation at the surface for the long period of time. So what I'm trying to do, and I also know that there are data sets available that tell me how much plastic is entering in the ocean through the coasts or through the rivers. So my application is what we call a Lagrangian simulation. So I look at how the currents transport material and where this material then goes. And I do this for the plastic. So for every week of the year, what I do is I create one of those Lagrangian simulation where I deploy virtual particles in this ocean model, and in that corresponds to the quantity that is estimated by those data sets. So whether it comes from the coastal input of plastics in the ocean or river input, and then the virtual currents that we represent are going to transport this plastic around, and then it's going to transport it for a matter of months, years, and then for a particular area, what we'll be able to do, and for the digital twin of the ocean, if we are interested in the plastic exposure of one place, we'll be able to look at this data set and say, how much plastic am I exposed to? And is this plastic exposure the same all year round, or does it change because of this variability in the currents? So the currents in a certain month are not the same as another month. So sometimes it means it brings plastic across, and sometimes it just brings it somewhere else. So can we provide some guidance and support for people that want to reduce the plastic exposure in their zone of management? If we know where this plastic most potentially comes from, we can actually work together in trying to target our action plan for mitigating this plastic. The idea for creating these applications is a co-design with potential users. So we have been in contact with people that or organizations that would be likely to use this. So we've been talking to people that work with turtles, or people that want to regional conventions that want to figure out how much plastic is contaminating the region that they want to protect, and what would be the best scenario in order to mitigate this pressure. Our ocean models are realistic, so we are using the physics that we know of the ocean to be able to reproduce the state of the ocean. The problem with plastic transport is that there are small errors when we reproduce the currents every day. So if we move our plastic from at one place and we move it to the next place the next day and so on, we sort of accumulate a little bit of errors. So after a long period of time, let's say after 2 years, we cannot guarantee that a plastic that left one place is actually where we diagnosed it to be. That's what we call uncertainties in our solution. So if we only use one model, we only have one solution. The idea is that if we can use multiple models, we're going to have a cloud of solutions which are going to be able to give us a sort of error associated with our prediction. So at the moment, we're using one model in order to create our predictions of where the plastic could go. But the idea is that we would develop a multi-model approach so we can associate and what we call uncertainties. Also, there is a large uncertainties of how much plastic enters the oceans. So it's not clear. This is knowledge that should not just remain in the hands of scientists. This is knowledge that needs to be used to develop activities in the ocean.
Right, so up until now we've been talking about large-scale, ocean-level problems like plastic pollution or the lives of teenage turtles, ninja or not. But the strength of this AI technology is that you can also deal with some local problems as well. And we spoke to Joaquin Tintore, who works at SOSIP, the Balearic Islands Coastal Observing and Forecasting System. And he, together with his team for decades now, has been working on trying to understand how to forecast something called meteotsunamis. And now he's going to be working with the digital twin in order to develop applications that could help local stakeholders to solve some very concrete issues. Let's have a listen to him.
The question in which I'm most interested is to understand how the ocean circulation influences the migrations of marine animals, and particularly long-distance migrators like sea turtles or tunas. To protect the species, you need to know where the animals are and what they do during their whole lifetime. And to do so, you have to understand how they move. And actually, animals that are moving in the ocean are moving under the influence of ocean currents. Ocean currents can either facilitate their migration or make it difficult. So that's why it's so important to understand how animals use or are constrained by ocean currents. There are only 7 sea turtle species on Earth, or rather in the ocean for the moment, and all of them are endangered, or at least the status of their population is a bit I don't know if shaky is the right word, but the future of their population is uncertain, and most of them are clearly endangered. And these animals are especially interesting and difficult to study because, first of all, they're very big migrators. I mean, we know that, for example, little turtles born in Japan will migrate to Baja California, or and other turtles born in Florida will come to the Azores and then the coast of Europe and the Canary Island and go back to Florida. So they're very big migrators. And when they are young, I mean, they are not very, they don't swim very rapidly, and their swimming velocities are close to the velocities of the current. So it's always difficult to know how much of their movement is due to their own swimming velocity and how much is due to the current. So it has always been difficult to diagnose exactly the dynamics of those animals. Our main subject of interest is to understand how the little turtles, or what we call juveniles, are moving, or where are they going after birth. I mean, little baby turtles, they're born on the beach, and then they get into the water, and then they disappear to observation. I mean, they're no longer seen for many years until they come back to the beach to reproduce again. And that period that scientists call the lost years, can last something like 10, 20, 30 years, depending on the species. So to understand where these hatchlings or sea turtles are going, we have to know the currents in the ocean. And the only way that we have to know, to simulate or predict where currents are going is to get it from ocean models or a digital twin of the ocean. So basically what we are doing is that we are simulating with a computer the dispersal of little turtles from their nesting beaches under the influence of simulated currents and a simulated swimming velocity. It's just like if we numerically simulate the dispersal of little turtles in a digital ocean, basically. And then we can figure out where they're actually going. If we didn't have the digital ocean, a digital twin of the ocean, we couldn't do what we are doing, because all our research is about simulating the dispersal of these juvenile sea turtles. And as I said, their dispersal is the result of both oceanic currents and the animal's own swimming velocity. And if you don't know the currents, you cannot make those simulations, and you can also not observe the trips or the migrations of these little turtles, because they are too small to be electronically tracked. I mean, large turtles, adults, can be tracked, satellite tracked. Small turtles are much too small to be equipped with transmitter and then followed. So basically, numerical simulations are almost the only way we have to simulate and understand why these animals might be going, to protect them. There have been theories of where these most juvenile sea turtles are going, and the first theory was that actually little turtles did not swim, so that their dispersal was only due to ocean currents. Of course, I mean, this was only a very crude theory, because nobody would imagine that a little turtle would not swim for 10, 20, or the first 30 years of her life. Sea turtles cannot live in very, very cold waters. So we assumed that those juveniles, they were swimming in direction that would keep them in waters with adequate temperatures. And we also assumed that they were swimming to find food. So basically, the rules of the model are very simple: is that a little turtle will be entrained by ocean currents, and then will swim towards the area with acceptable water temperatures and sufficient food. And doing those simulations, we realized that these little turtles actually had to perform every year seasonal migrations. During winter, they would swim towards equatorial regions to get warmer, and during summer, or spring and summer, they would swim more towards the higher latitudes, so towards the pole, as there is more food at higher latitudes. And those seasonal migrations were previously not adequately recognized as a major phenomenon, a major component of the migrations of these little animals. So that was a main outcome of our research, and actually taking into account those migrations has allowed us to come with a model that is producing a correct timing for some species, a correct timing of the migration from the birthplace to the place where we find juveniles in the ocean. Juvenile turtles at sea, they are subject to two main threats. One is fishery, so they can be caught in fishing nets, or they can be hooked. And the other one is plastics. Encounters with plastic, now we can not do anything about it except diagnose where it might happen. But for encounter with fisheries, there have been experiments, for example, in the United States, where we're using models actually simpler than the one we've developed, but where we can actually predict where turtles are going and provide this information to fishermen, telling them, okay, during this month and this area, and in this area, there is a higher probability for you to find turtles. And with this information, fishermen could adapt their fishing trips to avoid areas with a high probability of catching turtles. And in the United States, for example, in Hawaii, I mean, there are very strict regulations about sea turtle captures, and with the maximum numbers of turtles that can be captured by the longliners, by the Hawaiian longliners. And so the fishermen actually are using those forecasts of turtle presence to avoid reaching that maximal number of turtle by catch, because then the rule is that once the maximum number is reached every year, say the maximum number is 20, when it has been documented that the fishery has caught 20 turtles, all boats have to come back to the harbor and stay there until January 1st of next year. So it's very important for fishermen to be aware of the places where they are at risk of encountering and fishing turtles.
The digital twin of the ocean is a pan-European effort to better understand and model our oceans, and there are also digital twins, for example, of the Earth that various organisations are trying to put together. We've seen efforts to create a digital twin of the human brain, to model it and understand it using AI. All of those things now thanks to advances in high-performance computing. And there are other projects applying AI in fascinating and interesting ways to better understand the ocean as well. For example, Ocean X, which is a philanthropic project to boost education with amazing images and communication around ocean issues. But they're also working on a lot on data collection, as well as recording fantastic images. They're actually getting down and analysing DNA, for example, in different parts of the water column. Let's have a listen to the CEO, the co-CEO of OceanX, Vincent Pirie.
I always say that the ocean is this very complex system. It's the definition of a complex system, multiple interrelated systems that have nonlinear interactions with each other, and very difficult for humans to say, why are the fish here? Why is this ecosystem there? Where is the carbon? Why things, it's just too much of a multidimensional space to be able to get your head around that. So I think it's really ripe for, it's like climate above water is underwater is just as complicated and needs the type of tools that I think AI can provide. I always compare it to the climate, and above land, we have arrays of sensors all over countries. We have temperature and humidity, and we're constantly collecting. Literally, the U.S. NOAA is the largest data collector in the world. Every day they collect, billions of bits of data from all of these sensors, and then they have satellites orbiting with all sorts of sensors for different things. So all that data has been used over the years to develop these models, and we have, wave heights, we have, tidal changes. Everything is all incredibly, so it's very data rich. But underwater, the underwater environment is just inherently terrible for modern data collection because, first of all, it's opaque to light mostly. So by the time you get to 100, 200 meters, the light doesn't reach there. So you can't look down from a remote sensor, whether it be a satellite or it be a drone or anything. Helicopters, you've got a couple of meters at best. You've got maybe 10, 20 meters. That's it. But the ocean is, most of the ocean is 6,000 meters, in that range, the average. So you're not seeing it. Radio waves don't pass through the ocean well. We have a couple of convergent technologies that have sort of changed things dramatically. One is autonomous data collection from autonomous surface vehicles, things like a sail drone, or autonomous underwater vehicles, which are still a fairly bespoke business, but are becoming a little bit more commercial. And then we have ships sailing around, which less and less we have ships sailing around. But in other words, if I want to know what's going on, is there a thermocline or a halocline, meaning is there a step change in the density of water, which is a great aggregator of life and may determine why fish are here or there. I've actually got to put a sensor that goes down that depth, and maybe that thermocline is, or that halocline is at 2,000 meters. And I satellite, nothing can tell me that until I have to penetrate that. And then I got to drive over and do it again. So data collection is very difficult. But with the advent of remote controlled vehicles, I think we're collecting more and more data. That's one thing. I always say going to space is the difference between ambient pressure and a vacuum, but going to the bottom ocean is 50, 60, 1,000 times greater, as we saw in the recent incident. There's terrible things that happen at depth. Very few pieces of equipment, very few materials can withstand the pressures of the deep. So it's a complicated thing, but we can't just accept that. So I think the fast, cheap, and out of control sensor concept, where we've been working on sensors that are cheap, that can go deep. We're even working on scavenging energy from the deep, using that energy to power things, because we have these. You look in the water, you have an AUV that runs on large lithium-ion batteries that can go down and come back up again. And they're very difficult. They can only go down for a day or two. And then you look at a dolphin swimming around, doing dives to 1,000 meters, and it lives on a very poor quality energy source, which is fish, So these natural systems, sort of modeling natural systems to try to get down there and get that information. Use animals, put tags on animals, have them record. There's just a whole new field of thought. And then finally, I think it is, of course, the AI that is really going to be that linchpin. Because once you have all that data, what do you do with it? Because how do you connect, salinity to things in the water column, to plankton levels, to bottom bathymetry? It's just not something the human mind can handle. And in my own work in neuroscience, I've seen AIs do things that just leave me breathless. I mean, in terms of their ability, there's this, this sort of like cultural aversion to AIs because they think they're going to take over the world. But AIs that are trained on bespoke sets of data, certain sets of data to answer certain specific questions, and in my mind are nothing short of miraculous in what they're able to tell us as scientists. So I think that the digital twin is a great idea. What would be wonderful if countries would get together and decide on a harmonized format. I'm a very futurist thinker about things, and I try to imagine a world where politics and everything else doesn't come into play. And humans decided that certain things were bad for the world based on information that we had. That's how we make laws and rules. If we take a digital twin of the ocean and we understand better the services it's providing to us in terms of oxygen, in terms of taking down carbon, in terms of fish, in terms of all the things and the nice environments that we like to live in, and the twin is able to individually tell us about those factors, even if it's local. If it tells you about the Bay of Fundy or it tells you about the Mediterranean, it says, do this or stop doing this, and this will make this. And this is the degree to which this is hurting. And we let that drive policy. And there's so many questions that one could theoretically ask from an environment, from something like that we never even think to ask because we just can't conceptualize how that works. I experience so many problems in the ocean, so many things I would like to see changed. I don't have an answer to how to change it, except stop doing it. I mean, if humans leave the planet, the ocean's going to get better. Nothing that's happening in the ocean, in my experience, that's bad, is not a result of humans. I hate to put it that way, but humans interacting with the ocean is just not a good thing. So, the answer isn't humans can't interact with the ocean. That's not a way to go. So we have to tailor our interactions because they're clearly not working out, right? And nobody's ever said, oh, since humans showed up, the whole situation looks better. So gauging our behavior, as long as we have hopefully if we had strong information saying that you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, maybe you can get away with this, maybe you can get away with that, but these are no-nos, maybe the human behavior could be changed because this is such an unbelievable resource, the Earth. I mean, we don't need to go into that. I think William Shatner, when he went into space, he looked back and he was like, oh my God, we cannot leave this place. Like, there's just nowhere to go.
Well, if you didn't manage to see that moment when William Shatner goes to space, I recommend that you check it out. It is a true moment of science fiction becoming reality, and I hope we've whetted your appetite for all things AI and the ocean and this project to create a digital twin. It's been great having you. Thanks for watching us. Please head over to Euronews and euronews.com to follow world news from a European perspective, and wherever you get your podcasts, look up Ocean Calls and you can hear more fascinating conversations and celebrities talking about their favourite ocean moments. Thanks very much for watching this episode of Ocean Calls on YouTube. One more thing, please head over to your usual podcast app in order to listen to this episode with extra interviews and content on this topic. Catch some surprising facts and hear extraordinary tales of the sea from musicians, actors, activists and even astronauts. This season, for example, you'll hear from sex education actor Chris Jenks and fresh fish-obsessed Dutch chef Bart van Olfen. I'll see you soon.
Ocean Calls.